Okay. Good evening, and welcome to our Conval community, both in-house and live stream, to the fourth community forum. We, the Conval School Board and Administration, want to sincerely thank all of you for taking of your valuable time to share in this important information and communications event. I am Alan Edelkind, Conval School Board representative from Dublin, Vice Chair of the School Board, and Chair of the Communications Committee, which has organized this forum. Now, that sounds impressive, but it doesn't mean I did anything. It's just that I have the opportunity to get up here and make believe I did. But seriously, the credit goes to everybody from the school board, the administration, for helping to put this forum together. But before I talk about the forum, I'd like to take a minute to talk about the school board and the administration. We as your school board and administration have an obligation to do what is best for our community and our children. And that is to provide for the best, cost-effective, and safest educational environment for our community and our children. We also must be open and transparent in our communication to all, before, during, and after all our activities. This community forum is a means to do exactly that, communicate and inform. But did you ever think, who is the school board? Now, that is a good question. We are just like all of you. We are Conval community residents. Some are retired, some are semi-retired, and some are employed full-time. We live in the Conval community. We raise our children here. We pay taxes just like you do, and we enjoy living here. We give freely of our time, energy, and knowledge to work for the Conval community. We are your neighbors, and we are here to serve our Conval community because we feel it is our obligation to provide needed leadership for our children and community and do the best job possible to see that we provide for the right and safe educational environment for the right cost. That's who your school board is. 13 community folks just like you. Oh, and for full transparency, because I was told I have to be, we do receive an annual stipend, but that is really designed to cover our out-of-pocket expenses. I figured I'd tell you guys that. Now, most importantly, what is the school board's responsibilities? And there's always been a lot of questions on that. The role of a school board is not to run the schools. The role of the school board is to see that they are run well. And this all comes from the New Hampshire School Board Association. What the school board does, we set and establish school board policy, we establish the school district's budget and provide budget oversight, we hire the superintendent, and we evaluate the superintendent. We deal with collective bargaining, and we communicate to the public, keep the public informed of board actions, and we are involved in strategic planning, long and short-term goals, plans, and objectives. Running a school system like Conval is a daunting job, and we are fortunate to have for our superintendent, Dr. Kimberly Rizzo Saunders. Think of it, superintendent equals CEO. Major $50+ million diverse organization subject to the many rules and regulations of the state and local authorities. 11 separate school locations, a customer population every day of almost 2,000 students, 9 different communities to integrate into one cohesive approach and direction, diverse staff, many different individual needs, constant funding issues. It is unlike any other organization. The complexity is amazing. It is not a 9-to-5 job. The school board relationship is also with the superintendent is also unique. Other industries have boards that meet once a month. The school board and superintendent interact constantly, almost daily. Do we always agree? No, but that's good. Different opinions and approaches equals well thought out and executed activities. And we appreciate you, Kimberly. Now, to the forum information. As I said in prior forums, when we first started these community forums, lots of folks said we were nuts to do a community forum. Actually, they used stronger words, but nuts sounded sort of familiar, okay? They talked about horrible experience they've had, heard about, read about, etc. Needless to say, those remarks did give us pause to think. And I thought to myself, they're right about what they say. I've heard the same things. But they don't live here in the Conval community. Do we have issues? Well, of course we do. We are 9 diverse communities representing small and mid-sized towns, each with their own thoughts, desires, agendas, different demographics, but we come together for the common good. Many Conval community folks are passionate in their feelings, as they should be. There are lots of diverse and sometimes conflicting opinions and approaches to issues. But the one thing most everybody has in common is that we, as the Conval community, are civil people. Doesn't mean that we are laid back and accepting. No. But we know that we want others to hear what we say and not be remembered for how we say it. How's the forum organized? Simple. Like previous forums, we have presentations. For this one, we have 3 presentations scheduled. Each presentation is followed by a question and answer period where community folks have the opportunity to ask questions, make comments, and receive replies. For each presentation, the question and answer will be from our in-house audience and then from our online audience. We also have an open question and answer period where any questions can be asked on any relevant topic, and we will attempt to answer. The 3 presentations are as follows. The School Renovation Project. It will be presented by Jim Fredrickson, School Board Representative from Sharon. The Conval Strategic Plan, presented in 2 parts by Tom Burgess, School Board Representative from Peterborough, and Dr. Kimberly Rizzo-Saunders, Conval Superintendent. Upcoming events will be presented by Dick Dunning, School Board Representative from Peterborough. Our moderator will go into more detail on how this works. Lastly, something new in this forum. We will be hosting a meet and greet at the end of the forum in the high school cafeteria. This is an informal get-together with light snacks, very light snacks, for the community to meet and talk to other community members, school board representatives, and administration. This is informal, will only last a half an hour, and we hope our in-house audience will attend. I want to sincerely thank all the folks who have been involved in organizing this community forum, both the presenters and our offstage folks. Special thanks to Liz Swan, School Board Representative from Temple, Kira Christian, School Board Representative from Bennington, for their work on coordinating incoming questions from a large stream audience, Mark Schaub, District School Systems Administrator, for putting together all of the AV and communications infrastructure for this and all previous forums. I would like now to turn the forum over to Janine Lesser, our school board representative from Peterborough, school board chair, and the forum moderator. Thank you all for taking your time to join us. Janine, it's all yours.
Thank you, Alan. There's really nothing left to say. Alan did such a wonderful job of introducing and opening this forum. And I'd like to say a special thank you to him who has put an amazing amount of time and work into organizing these forums. Your first presentation is Jim Frederickson on the middle school and high school proposed renovations. As you know, one of the most important things a district does is try to maintain its buildings for health, safety, and to support the changing educational environment. They haven't been updated in a while and they need updating. So Jim is our budget and property chair and he will present that information. Thanks, Jim.
Could you find it for me? I'm scheduled for 20 minutes, but it won't take that long. I figure 40 minutes might do it.
Yes.
Put me a slide there, too. And we're off and running. Good, thank you. So really only have 2 slides to talk about. I'm Jim Frederickson again from Sharon, Chairman of the Budget and Property Committee. And we're going to talk about what we're calling the modernization program. And I've really got just 2 slides to cover, and it's not advancing. Yes, it did advance, not here. Okay, so the purpose of the project is to develop concepts and costs for modernization of the facilities. And they're aging facilities. I'm not going to go through the history of when they were built and where they came from, but it's been a long time since the 2 middle schools and the high school were built and put together. The second purpose of the project is to support whatever we do and decide to do in the Conval strategic plan, okay? Whatever decision we make on those buildings has to be backed up with costs. The first step of the project is the scope of the project includes the high school and the Associated Regional Technology Center, otherwise known as the CTE, Great Brook School, and SMS. Funding is going to be a mix of sources, and we're not sure exactly how much is going to come from each of the sources. It's going to include some use of district trust funds, which you vote on every year. It's going to include some state funds. There's specifically some state funds that are going to should be available, hopefully be available, for the renovation of the CTE. There's also an ongoing program the state provides building aid fund. We've got to apply for those funds. In order to apply for those funds, we need detailed costs and concepts, okay? It's one of the reasons we're doing this. Finally, we know we're going to need some sort of a bond from the district. The voters will be able to vote on this and decide how much we want to spend on this. Timing, kind of out in the future a little bit. The concept designs are going to start now, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. State funding for the CTE renovation, just to give you an idea of the time scale, our proposal to the state to renovate the CTE is due in January 24. The district will vote on it in March 24, and then the state will move forward, and we wouldn't actually be able to start construction until fiscal year 26, which starts in July of 25. I got my years right, okay? That's a little bit out, but recognize that the state funding of the CTE is just part of the high school. So whatever we do with the high school, we want to take into account what we want to do with the CTE, and we also have to take a look at what we want to do with the middle schools. So construction is going to be decided. What we do in construction, the schedule is going to be doing subject in part to what we decide to do and how much it's going to cost and how much we get. Okay, so the key to this is flexibility. So the first step in the process is to establish a building committee. We actually put a building committee together. There were several board members. We had some not faculty members, some administration members, a couple principals. When we went and visited, we invited 4 architects to participate. 3 of them said they could. 1 was qualified, couldn't, it was too full. All 3 were very good. We went and visited 3 schools, and we decided on 1 architect. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So the next step is to establish hire the architect, and we're hopefully going to do that in the next week or 2. We've got them selected. We're doing terms and conditions right now. I'll tell you in a second who they are. We're going to establish a formal building committee. And what'll be different this time? I told you about the school board and the administration participating in the selection of the architect. Now we're going to add the architect, and we're going to add 1 or 2 members of the public. So if you're interested in participating on this committee, please let us know, and we'll see if we can accommodate you. We definitely want members of the public on the committee. The architect we're talking to is Levelee Brensinger. They're a big architect. They're very experienced. We actually visited Salem High School. Has anybody in the room here been to Salem High School besides those of us who visited the board? It blows you away when you walk in that facility. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It makes you want to go to Salem. It's just beautiful. When you walk in, you just can't be impressed with the place. It's also got some security features that we don't have. You walk in this building, and we don't have anybody. They're watching everybody walking in the door. We need that, right? You ever know what's going on in the world. So the idea here is to develop concepts. We want everybody's ideas. The key is going to be flexibility, openness, community involvement, and affordability. The architect we selected, 2 of the top 3 that we selected, both were very, very impressive in terms of the process that they were going to follow. The process they're going to follow, they're not going to walk in and say, this is what you ought to do. They're going to go and say, what do you think needs to be done? You, sir, you, Dick, Janine, me, students, teachers, everybody. What do we want to do to the schools? What do you think? Then we have to take that, put numbers to them, and see what we can afford, timing and that. So it's going to be a several-year process, clearly, to do this. But we do encourage you to participate both in the committee if you're interested, and we're going to have a number of meetings like this. We'll probably have an architect at maybe a public forum, open forum like this, get ideas, to show ideas. So that's all I have to say. I'll open up to questions and answers. I don't have a lot of answers right now because, again, it's so much. You got to be flexible in timing, scope. Any questions? Sir, you identify yourself and.
Jesse Markham Dublin, just, and this is very broad, right? You're obviously going to have a lot more here
Yes.
in terms of figuring out the scope of this project. But do you personally or as the board have any specific problem areas? You mentioned security features, but are there any main kind of problem areas that you're looking specifically at these?
Theater?
Theater.
Theater?
It's going to be a big project, right? Presumably you're going into this and you have this idea going into it because there's maybe some existing problems with certain infrastructure. Right?
Dick, do you want to answer that?
Sure. I think one of the things we talked about is when you do new construction, looking out 10, 15, 20 years, will this building be able to facilitate those educational changes that are coming down the road? Technology being one of the big ones, going to have that kind of flexibility and the infrastructure of the building itself, looking what the students do. So that's the biggest part.
So you're talking a whole new building or
It all depends on what the architect, it wouldn't be a whole new building, just renovate what we have, but within that renovation, what can we do with the structure we have now to meet this, we need to fix the future, not tomorrow, but 5, 10, 15 years out. Because getting a new building, you're looking out 20 years before you even talk about it. So having that kind of vision, that's what these architects are good at, saying, here are the visions that we see in the construction of the building. Security is probably the number one thing we will focus on the most, and then technology.
And to be upfront with you, one of the options that the strategic plan is going to look at is, should we go to one middle school? If we go to one middle school, what has to be done to what building to accommodate students from both schools? So it's that kind of stuff that we, as a board and the administration, just don't have the wherewithal to do. We need costs to do it. I forget the numbers on state funding. They fund, what, 75% of it?
Yeah.
It's a large chunk of money we get from the state for doing the CTE. Okay, so we want to make sure we get that right. And in order to get the funding from the state for the CTE, you got to have an architect involved. So let's do it all at once. Start with a clean sheet of paper and what do we want to do, okay?
in order to fix the problem, what kind of
Combination,
preventative maintenance kind of
Combination.
project to make sure that
combination.
Things.
It's a clean sheet of paper. And we've got a good architect, we've got the people we talk to are good and talented, and we're really looking forward. It's going to be an exciting project. So we do welcome, we need your participation because we want to, one of the keys to success is the community voting on this and approving the bond because we're not going to be able to do it without bond. We just don't have the money in our budget or trust funds to do it. We're going to need a bond. And in order to get a bond approved, everybody's got to buy into it, right? You all got to want to buy that house or modify it, right? Any other questions? Again, thank you. Who's next?
Thank you, Jim. So next we have, our next presentation is on the strategic plan. The strategic plan has been under development for the past year. The board, the administration, and the larger community were all involved in the development of this plan, and we think we got a good one. So we're happy to present the details to you tonight. It will remain online for comment until the end of Monday, the 14th. And once we get all of the comments, what we get tonight and what we get from the online comments, they will be incorporated, they'll be reviewed and incorporated into the strategic plan. Once that's done, it'll go back to the board for voting, and we will have adopted the new strategic plan that will guide us for the next 5 years. So I'd like to welcome Tom and Dr. Saunders, Dr. Rizzo Saunders, up to the stage to present that plan.
I need you to bring back the original strategic plan for us. Maybe. Oh no, I want the actual document.
Do you want to tell them who you are first?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I want to have that plan too.
Okay.
So, good evening. I'm Tom Burgess, School Board Representative from Peterborough. Tonight we're going to be presenting the Conval School District's 5-year strategic plan covering 2022 to 2027. Strategic planning is a necessity for a well-run school district. It's a process that helps set an ambition for the school district's future, determines how best to achieve it. Its primary purpose is to connect 3 key areas: mission, defining the school district's purpose; vision, describing what we want to achieve; and 3, planning, outlining how we're going to achieve these long-term goals. Strategic planning is different from operational planning. It requires stepping back from the day-to-day operations and articulating where the school district is heading by setting long-term goals, objectives, and priorities for the future. So I was going to show them the actual plan, just briefly, as Janine mentioned, is on the website and still available for comments, feedbacks, your thoughts. So, but not for much longer. I think it's only up through November 14th, and then the comment period closes. So this is the plan you will see. It starts out with some introductions and some messages. Then pages 3 to 5 has some basic information about our schools, the student population, district data, the teachers. Page 5 also has information about the various assessment tools Conval uses to measure student progress. And then pages 6 through 8 have current student assessment, academic assessment results. The scores are for our students in reading and math in grades 3, 5, 7, 10. Where's 10? There, this grade 10 and 11. These current results will be the starting point for our academic goals, which is priority area number 1. Moving on. We talk about how we're going to measure the success of our 5 priority areas and the goals we have in each area. And within this document are very specific metrics about how we're going to measure success, if we're making the progress that we're looking to achieve, or if we need to make some adjustments and we're hopefully exceeding our goals. And so that is included starting on page 10. It shows you the baseline, the growth that we're anticipating, that we're hoping to achieve, and then the 2027 target. And that continues on for all 5 priority areas. I'm just zooming through it because it's available on the website, and I just want you to be aware of what's there so you can, if you haven't seen it already, you can dive into it. Priority area 2 and 3, which we will go into in greater depth, are also the measurements, the metrics for them are listed too. That's supportive structures and climate. Get into more detail about that in a second. Priority area 3 is support structures for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. 4 is organizational structures, financial processes, and infrastructure, including consolidation and reconfiguration. And priority area 5 is staffing and maintaining and our high-level staff through various metrics. Talk about our core beliefs and our philosophy, and then we get into the actual goals and priorities, which we have on a separate slideshow. So that's basically the strategic plan. It also at the end has a glossary for some of the educational jargon so that you can look it up because some of it is not readily apparent that you may not be familiar with. And then and there's a little description of the long process, but I think Dr. Saunders is going to
Sure.
talk a little bit about that too.
So I'm Kimberly Rizzo Saunders. I'm the superintendent of schools. I'm going to apologize. I'm leaning. Stairs get tough about my age, I think. I don't bounce anymore either. We had an extensive process that has actually gone across 2 school years. First of all, the school board formed a strategic steering committee. And what they then did, that strategic steering committee created an invitation and sent that out to community members and also targeted specific community members to join several different subcommittees. At one point there were 7, but we did combine 2 at mostly around participation. So that was finance and property and capital and improvement. So once those subcommittee members were assigned, then we actually did a community survey. That community survey was available online. It went out via Twitter. It was on our Facebook page. It went out through a press release. It was out on Conval News, which of course now is the time I'm going to plug Conval News. If you are not signed up for Conval News, you can sign up at convalnews.com and you can get that right to your email. So convalnews.com. That's updated regularly. We then got those survey results in, and at the same time, subcommittees were really identifying key issues for very specific areas. When the survey results were in, the subcommittees then reviewed those survey results, as did the steering committee. We also, in addition to, once those survey results were reviewed, we had Joe Miller from Think Strategy come in and run a series of 7 to 8 focus groups. That material was also reviewed by both the steering committee as well as those subcommittees. through that process, priority areas were determined. So areas, if you think about it, well, they probably look obvious. They do set the tone for the strategic plan. Once those priority areas were identified, then we created what I would refer to as goals or priority area objectives. And underneath each of those goals are several objectives in order for us to reach each of those goals. And Tom and I are going to spend quite a bit of time going through each of the priority areas. So once those were finalized, we created a draft plan, and that draft plan was shared with the community. And so now we are in the process of taking public comment on the document. So you can go to the website. I'm going to just step out here for a second so that you can see where you can go. So it is actually a banner, so no matter where you are on convalsd.net, this strategic plan you can see right here, and then you can just click right here, and that should open for an email. You can send those public comments directly to that email. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about priority area 1. So if you think about what our business is, we're in the business of educating children. So it's no surprise really that quality curriculum and instruction is priority area 1. We really wanted to dig into what the most evidence-based strategies were, and you'll see that is goal, really your first goal under priority area 1 is to refine the use of evidence-based practices. We also want to look carefully at how we're using technology, both in our classrooms, but also how students are using it. So are they using it to word process, or are they using it to create? And that those are two very different skills. And where is it most purposeful, and where is it most appropriate for students to be using educational technology? We also want to make sure that we are looking very carefully at individual students and their individual needs, as well as how we can work with students from where they are when they are in a classroom. So as you can imagine, when you have 15 to 20 students in front of you, they're in a variety of places, and we want to make sure that each student that comes to each teacher makes at least, if not more, than a year's worth of growth. And then we also are very interested, as many people in the district have already expressed to us repeatedly, in expanding our world language program to K-12. As our world becomes more diverse and our neighbors become more diverse, we want to make sure that while diversity is always a fact, that we are being equitable and inclusionary and able to embrace all of our neighbors. And we do believe that students being able to speak a second language is important in today's global society. We also have a priority of streamlining assessments. We want to make sure that the assessments that we use give real-time information to our teachers and to those working with our students so that they can change and meet individual students' needs and clearly communicate student progress. In the plan, you will see under each of those goals ways in which we are going to achieve that. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tom, who's going to go through 2, 3, and 4.
Thanks, Kimberly. Priority area 2 is supportive structures and climate, and that really is about social and emotional support for our students. The New Hampshire Education Code 306.39 mandates that all New Hampshire schools provide a K-12 school counseling program, including personal social development, and provides responsive services to meet students' immediate needs and concerns. So we think of schools as places of academic learning, and of course that's their primary role, but we're also responsible for the students' social development, socialization, and also their emotional well-being and emotional growth and maturity. And that's what this priority area is all about. A part of it is back to the computers that Dr. Saunders mentioned, digital citizenship, learning about interacting with other people online, how to present yourself there, a culture of technology use and communicating roles, how you represent yourself. Another one is increasing student participation in co-curriculum and athletic activities, grades 5 through 12. Students who are involved in affective activities, things they want to do, that they enjoy doing, look at school as a place not just of requirement, but a place that's fun, and they're doing something that is meaningful to them, important to them, that they enjoy, that they're good at. And they may not be getting any credit for it, but it's part of a big part of what a lot of people remember best about their school days. So that's something we want to increase, is have more students, more options available for our kids to be active in and to be proud of themselves for and to enjoy. We also want to make sure students in the classes are having their needs met, and that's what some of these acronyms you see here, which are on the plan also: Conval 2025, multi-tiered systems of student behavior. These are all terms that describe the school's effort to coordinate and make sure that the different schools are all preaching from the same hymnal, and we're all identifying and meeting the needs of the students in this area. Priority Area 3, supportive structures for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. House Bill 2 was passed by both House bodies of the legislature and signed into law by the governor June 25th, 2021. Right to freedom from discrimination in public workplaces and education. Schools must continually strive to treat all equally and with dignity and respect. That's the basis for this priority. We want people to feel welcome. We want people not to feel that anything about them is preventing them from having equal opportunity and full involvement in the school and any activity that they are interested in and capable of performing. So how are we going to accomplish this? We're going to conduct a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility audit to determine where we're at and where we have areas of need of growth and some opportunity to improve in this area. Ensure resources all across the district are promoting equitable opportunities for all students. Review and respond to challenges presented to historically underrepresented populations. And review our own policies to make sure that we're doing the right thing and doing it the right way. Priority Area 4. Effective and efficient organizational structures, financial processes, and infrastructure. Bullet 1 or 4.1, analyze consolidation and reconfiguration to assess the academic, social, community, and financial benefits and opportunities. The board has sent out a request for information and I want to read that to you once I find it. Here we go. The challenges of a large multi-school environment, while enrollment remains stable or decreases, presents a strain on budgets, staff, and equity in education. Advances in technology, education, processes, specialization, complexity, and increasing government regulation requires that we look at our current distributed environment with the goal of providing an optimal configuration that ensures that a cost-effective and quality education is provided as we move into the future. School districts in New Hampshire rely almost exclusively on property taxes and federal funding to support our budget requirements. This heavy reliance places a visible burden on our district taxpayers and requires us to be proactive and conservative in our approaches to budget management. Therefore, the Conval School District wants to engage an external organization for the purpose of performing a comprehensive analysis into the feasibility and methodology to consolidate or reconfigure our multiple school environments. And here's what we asked for, the information, some of the questions that we asked to be answered for our for this request for information. Education. What are the educational benefits and disadvantages of consolidation realignment? What are the opportunity costs of not consolidating or realigning? Financial. What are the financial impacts? Social. What are the social and emotional impacts on students as a result of a consolidation? Community. What are the impacts on the various towns? Future. What are the risks and benefits of consolidation? Ideal model. What is the best physical footprint and structure for the Conval School District, regardless of the current physical plant? Best model. What's the best model available given the existing physical plant? And what would be the next best model? So that we're gathering information. Dr. Saunders mentioned that the surveys were sent out to parents and community members, to students, to the teachers. One of the questions that was asked was about consolidation. And it's a topic that people have differences of opinions. However, I want to just read you the results. 14.41%, 69 people said they strongly agree with the concept of consolidation. 28.21%, or 138 people, agreed with the concept. 19.42%, or 93 people, disagreed with the concept. 18.37%, or 88 people, strongly disagreed with the concept. And 19%, or 91 people, didn't have an opinion at this time either way. So we're across the board. So what we're doing is gathering information so we can present it, learn it ourselves, and then at some point present it to the public and get your feedback and see what makes sense, what's the best path forward. But we are right now at the gathering information stage. In addition to the consolidation issue under this area, create a master facility plan, a little bit of what Jim was talking about identifying the different needs, physical needs of our community and making sure that we're spending money wisely and thinking about how we're going to use these buildings in the future. And ensuring effective and continuing really clear, good communications like what Alan has arranged for us to do tonight. Okay, and now with priority 5, Dr. Saunders.
No matter what research you look at that involves education, there's one clear thing, and that is the most important and most effective tool to educate children is to have a highly effective teacher and highly effective staff working with students. When we talk about making sure we have that, we need to maintain an environment that is attractive to our employees who are here, is attractive to young people and older people who want to move into education, and that it is a positive culture to work within. And so we are looking for ways to promote and support staff well-being, which is becoming more and more a focus as educating students becomes more and more challenging. We want to make sure that we are seen as a destination employer, that people recognize and know that this is a phenomenal place to work, live, play. in the Monadnock region. And finally, we want to make sure we provide high-quality professional development and growth opportunities for people to come here and stay for their entire career. So the next steps for our program, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're in the public comment phase. We do and will be reviewing public comment. We will be doing that at the board meeting on the 15th. It's on the agenda. And this is the public comment link. And we will be reviewing those public comments. We will make necessary revisions based on the school board and the steering committee. And then it will go to the board for final approval, after which we will use the strategic plan as our primary document for the direction that we go in related to budget, hiring, as well as professional development. So I'm going to stop there because I do know that there's some questions. I would ask that we start with the questions that have to do, since once I get down, it's hard for me to get back up. If we could start with the questions for 1 and 5, so that I don't have to get down and get back up.
On
No,
page,
she can hear me. And will the home audience still be able to hear me?
Better if somebody's at these microphones, but this can also pick up.
I can't really see.
well, on page 6 of the strategic plan document, it shows that grade 5 math in particular is significantly lower than the state average, which is very different than grade 3 and the other grades. Could you explain why that might be?
So please keep in mind that what you're looking at right now also is post-COVID. So across, right. So, but what we also see in 5th grade is a significant increase on the state test as far as the difficulty of the state test. So what we're doing is starting to really look into that and decide what is it that we are preparing our students for. We have in the past been avoiding teaching to the test. So because we want to make sure that our students have a wide and deep understanding of mathematics, which you do see in the younger grades. But we are also looking clearly at middle school in general regarding mathematics. And you will note, if you look at the middle school goals around mathematics, that they are very ambitious. So we are recognizing that there's kind of a big step up in what we are expected, and students are expected to know and understand and be able to do with math by the end of 5th grade. And we want to make sure that we're preparing them for it, hence the very ambitious goal.
Could you expand on how you expect to reach the goal, I guess?
Yep. So we are actually going to be talking a little bit more about that on Saturday, and then it's going to include some real-time intervention with students and pushing into classrooms, probably increasing the amount of math that they actually get. We also have spent some significant time with teachers in K4, working on helping them better understand how students learn math, and we will be starting to work that into grades, the upper grades. And if you want more information, there's a much deeper answer. That's like the 100,000-foot view, and if you'd like to have more conversation, I'm happy to do that.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, so kind of on that same topic, just a general comment. I actually find the data extremely hard to understand in this document. There's a lot of contextual information that's missing that actually makes the data almost impossible to really interpret. So you might want to go through and look at things like axis labels and actual explanation of what the data are.
Thank you.
Because I had the same concerns. My initial concern was I was at awe of some of those numbers, particularly 5th grade. But then I realized that I actually don't know what those numbers represent. So I think that's kind of across the board for all of those?
We did get the access comment already in our, yes.
So just kind of just general data presentation, I think really needs some improvement so that the public actually understands what's in here. And the other part too, regarding the data, there are some of those metrics where you want to improve those goals. A lot of them are by approximately 20%. Again, I don't know what those numbers represent. But even then, how did you come up with those projected goals? And why do you think those are reasonable? I mean, we'd all love it if we all had 100% proficiency. We get that.
Absolutely.
But what allows you, what about those goals you think is reasonable for actually moving the needle that far in the next 5-year period?
Some of it is necessity. So particularly as you talked about in middle school math. And so what we know about student growth from research is 3% a year is considered ambitious growth. So what we did was when we went through to figure out what that growth should be, we looked to see what does 3% look like at each piece. Where are we, and what do we think we can accomplish over the next 5 years regarding each of those areas?
You're basically projecting a roughly 2 to 3% increase per year over the next 5 years.
In some areas more.
So where do you get that? What constitutes ambitious? Where does?
So what we know from, and again, this would be a much longer answer, but what we know from research around student growth is that 2 to 3% is considered ambitious. That's that. You always want students to make at least a year of growth. When you start to go into 3%, you're actually stretching students to make more than a year's worth of growth within their 180-day school year. And so we get that from assessment research.
I'm trying to like wrap my head around this, but for example, the third grade continued at their level instead of dropping down. Would you be hitting that goal at fifth grade in 2 years?
I would actually have to look at which one you're looking at, because there's several. If you'll notice, there's several. There's the main core metrics, and then there's supporting metrics. So I would have to look at which one you're referring to exactly.
John Wood from Dublin. So I looked at the last strategic plan, and so on the 2021 strategic plan, you talked about what was the net positive from the previous strategic plan. But in this one, you don't talk about what was accomplished from the previous strategic plan that now we're building on this year. So goal number 1 for last year was, or last strategic plan is similar to this year. So I guess my question for further, not now, but in the future is what are you changing to somehow maximize that strategic plan that now it's going to be, we're going to get success out of this now that we're changing these things?
So actually the steering committee talked about that, and I'm looking at Kevin because you were one of the people that brought it up. And we had quite an interruption during, I don't remember what happened, but we had quite an interruption during the last strategic plan. So there was some back and forth on whether we should actually say, and here are the things we accomplished. We certainly have a long list of accomplishments from the last strategic plan. And the decision wasn't really about not wanting to inform the public, but we put out something called We Are Conval every year, and you can look at that, and we talk about the strategic plan in that. So we felt like that information was out there. But of course, I am sure that the steering committee has heard your comment and will consider that.
Sorry. To better clarify, based on what the 2 other individuals talked about, student data. Right. So where were we 4 years ago? Where were we 2 years ago? Pre-COVID.
Yep.
Right. And where are we today?
And if you look at We Are Conval, that information is actually in that document. And you can find that right online.
I know we already asked a question about, I'm trying to piggyback off of that question on number 1, but while you're here on number 5, to me, when I look at initiative number 5, To me, it's all about image, and I certainly appreciate and really commend your thought in number 5 and really trying to increase the image of the school in terms of staff recruitment. It might be too late to include a whole new section, but I would actually encourage you to think about something similar for attracting students. We're in a much different cultural and political reality now. It will be probably going to get worse in the next few years, where I think the district is going to actually have to start thinking a lot more about how to strategically recruit students from the district, because there are going to be a lot more options. It might be too late to put into this type of plan. I don't know if it's something that could be worked into Part 5, but I think it's a new reality that we have to fix.
Yep, I have actually talked to staff about that pretty extensively. I refer to it as, I say to them, welcome to the competitive education marketplace. And they're laughing, somebody is laughing at me for that. It is one of my favorite areas. And I actually have I do have some goals around that. They don't quite meet the strategic plan, and that is mostly about the fact that if you think of some of the schools that, particularly in the area that are attracting students, we do not, as a rule, staff a development office. And I don't have the staff to do something like that. But it is I would encourage you to stay for the meet and greet after and talk to the board, and they can certainly talk to you about the conversations I've had over the last 2 or 3 years with the board around that. Right, Kevin? I can see you, that you're the only person I can see. Any other questions about 1 or 5? Hi.
Question.
Sure.
John Cecito from Francistown.
Hi, John.
May not be as smart as everybody in this room, but I do have a question when it comes to priorities. Teachers, coaches, leaders, they seem to be the founding foundation of all what attracts people, what attracts good education and everything else. Why is that number 5 on our list and not further up?
Actually, the only one that is in order, and the only one that is in order, and that the administration insisted was first, was quality curriculum and instruction, because all of the other 4 priority areas feed into that. If we could put one up and the rest all even, that's the way it would have looked. After one, they just happened to be in that order. They weren't in any other order. Two went in next, really, because it's still about students. Probably not the best answer in the world, but that is the truth. Thank you so much for your time.
Since I covered 2, 3, and 4, I would be the person to ask the question, though I can't guarantee I'm the guy who has the answers. So, yes. Hi.
My name's Angela, and I'm a parent. I have a 5th grader at SNF and a 4th grader at CES. First of all, I just want to say I was really impressed by the strategic plan. It's visionary and just a ton of work put into it. It makes me really grateful. I wanted to speak to priority 2, in particular point 2.6, which recommends options to push back the start time in middle school and high school. I have a comment and a question. So first, I think getting enough sleep is really foundational for our kids to do their best, and obviously our staff too. Getting enough sleep allows kids to do better in many, many ways, to be able to focus and learn, to be good thinkers, work well with other kids on a team. And mental health is another huge piece. My kids also participate in sports, and I think being well rested is also essential for strong academic performance. And I continue to a large extent agree that some of the other priorities are more important, but I think that well rested kids allows the kids and staff to thrive in all these other areas. And I also know a couple of years ago there was an effort tried, and there was something in the budget for additional plus time, and I know that voters didn't support that, but I feel like there's other creative things that we could do to be thinking of
different strategies to really look at this question and really see, could we push it back, even if it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, which I think would make a big difference. So my question is, would you be open to a focus group of staff, students, and parents to meet on this? And I would be happy.
Yeah, it's a logistical nightmare. That's, I know, because I was a teacher for 35 years, and the topic has come up, many times over the years, and it's just a very challenging. But in terms of the focus group, I defer to Dr. Saunders on that. Such luck.
So as Tom has already alluded to, research is very clear here. There is no doubt our prepubescent and pubescent children need as much sleep as infants in order to grow and develop properly. So there is absolutely there's no questions. What it really is it is a logistical nightmare. It is about busing. It is about being a 3,200-mile bus route when all in. That's, by the way, all the way to California. And what happens is we've talked about flipping the day. We've talked about a single-tier bus, which would actually be in everybody's best interest, but that costs almost $1 million. And as you saw, that was right before COVID, right? When that was literally right before COVID, and that was not. It didn't. Not only didn't it pass, it really didn't pass. It got less than 24% of the vote. So we are left with a variety of options, and none of them ideal. I would tell you that in one of the reasons the single-tier bus doesn't work is because it costs more money because there's so much pushback about having kindergartners and 12th graders on the same bus. If you look across New Hampshire, there's lots of places that try that. So there are actually real solutions for this. I think as part of this, you will see not necessarily a focus group, but a work group. So I heard that you might have volunteered for that. And really looking at laying out what those options are, costing them out and putting them in front of parents. Because the truth is we can't have 6 and 7-year-olds get off the bus in the dark in places that don't have sidewalks. I mean, that's a hard fact. And we also need our teenagers to get more sleep.
It might have been a mistake, but you didn't even speak to it. Like, it's 2.6 and it didn't even get brought up. And I also think it's very important. I've seen in the elementary schools, like, the work they put into SEL and the impact it has. And then they get to middle school and we're expecting them to come so early unrested. And it feels like that's actually why I question the 5th grade scores. Like, does this have something to do with it? It says that the strategic plan is student focused, but we're totally missing an opportunity here.
That's an interesting point, and the fact that I didn't read it out loud, I didn't want to, read everything, so I just picked a few items of them because the plan is there. So there was no slight. It made it into the plan, so it is considered important. And that's an interesting point you brought up about the dip in scores in the 5th grade. I mean, I don't know if there's anything to it, but it's something, a theory. So there was going to be as Dr. Saunders mentioned, it's a work, what you call it? A work group to work on it. So something available. Yes.
Carrie Higley from Dublin. I have another start time bus question. If this were to go through with a more reasonable start time for middle school and high school, does that impact the elementary school? Does that get flipped for elementary?
I think it's the same buses. Am I wrong about that?
You are wrong.
Yeah, I am wrong.
That will really, so the devil is always in the details, right? So a lot of that will depend on, that is an option to flip the day. That would be an option that you could look that has been looked at. Another option would be not to flip the day, but to put all the students on the same bus. Every single one of those has its detractors and its supporters. And I think that one of the reasons that it's in the plan is because we really need to carefully look at what are the options, what can we do, and what will the community feel confident and good about doing. But it's in the plan because we can't not do something. There's not a choice to have no action.
Priority 3 is probably one of the most important on your plan, because I think, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself, Sarah Koch, Peterborough. We're only as good as our most underserved students as a school district, and I really believe that. And I saw how you were very inclusive with children who are food insecure, children who are from the BIPOC community, and disabled children, right, students. I feel like you're missing a really big population here, and that's the LGBTQ plus community, specifically transgender and non-binary. I find it concerning that the title for priority 3 is equity and inclusion, and that's not mentioned at all. I know that from the state, there's a policy that you could be implementing for the school district that includes and recognizes that community. So I would like to see the Conval Policy Committee address that.
The policy committee is looking at that. There's currently a procedure that is being worked on by the administration and the teachers. In fact, there was an earlier question about that. But we are considering it. It is a very important area.
Well, talk to me about, I did look at your minutes, and it was brought up over the past maybe like 14 or 15 months as a future agenda item, and never in the minutes was it actually addressed. So that's concerning to me.
So I've had the pleasure, I understand that school board members get to like leave policy every like 2 or 3 years, but I, for some reason, have not been successful in doing that. But so there have been many renditions actually of the policy regarding gender identity, particularly. Recently, it was actually withdrawn by the New Hampshire School Boards Association. And one of the things that multiple renditions of the policy committee, and the only reason I can tell you this is because I get to sit at all of them. I am the liaison for the policy committee from the administration. I am not a policy committee member. I don't vote. What the policy committee felt really strongly about was that AC, which is our non-discrimination, should be the focus of what we are talking about when we are talking about any group of people. And there was some concern that even creating a policy was in fact discriminatory. So that is one of the reasons it keeps being in that future meeting piece, because people are not sure whether, and again, I am speaking for the policy committee. Kevin, you're over there, you're a policy committee member. Ms. Dr. Ullman, you're a policy committee member. But that was the feeling, was that wanting to be inclusive and then creating a separate policy seemed to be contradictory. And Kevin, I would invite you to follow up if you want.
I don't think it's been tabled, but it is something that we're looking for a way to achieve what Dr. Saunders said, which is to expand our inclusiveness and our promotion of students' identity without at the same time trying to label every single possible categorization. And so far, it has seemed that having a general policy that would apply to everybody, not everybody being treated or identified equally, but apply to everybody's needs, has seemed the more appealing route so far. But it's still on the agenda, it's still there for consideration.
Anyone I'm missing? Okay.
Can I put this down? Okay, so the first question that came in from our virtual audience was a question about one of our priorities that had to do with consolidation or reconfiguration. And we always call it consolidation or reconfiguration because we're at the point of we're collecting data. And we have gone through this process before, it is true. But it is a process that is very controversial, shall I say. So we want to make sure that we have good data to build on. And that's the point we're at. And Article 16 of our Articles of Agreement states that we actually are supposed to, in order to be most effective, so that we accurately reflect to the extent practical current conditions in the district, schools, and administration, we should be reviewing the configuration of the district every 3 years. And of course, that's not really possible, but we can look at different things. But this is a very timely undertaking. And I just want to say that at the beginning, around any questions about the consolidation, we really don't have any answers for you right now because we don't have all the data right now. And that's what we're collecting. That's what the RFI is all about. A lot of different configurations have been discussed before. I know that approximately 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, there was a warrant article to close Great Brook and move those students over to SMS, and it was soundly defeated. So that might be where we end up, but it's we'd like to have the data before we go there. There was another question. And as far as positives and negatives, I'm sure that there'll be a number of those, but we don't know what they are yet. So, and we fully invite the public and we fully expect that the community will be a part of this whole process. So there was another question about is the school board a political entity, organization, or a nonpartisan organization? We are a nonpartisan organization. We have one focus, and that is to provide the best education and use our resources to provide that best education possible. We keep the children, of course, the schools are our primary focus, and taxpayers are our secondary, but are very high up there. Those are two things that we have to consider always. And Jim referred to that a little bit when he was talking about this whole process of the proposals for the renovation of the middle schools and the high school. And this is a very good question. How can we increase community and parent involvement in the schools with school day and after school activities? Are we welcoming across the district? Well, I would hope. I would certainly hope we are welcoming across the district. We certainly try to be welcoming across the district. And we always we welcome any ideas. I know we've got some pretty wonderful PTOs. They do some pretty great things in the schools, and that has a lot to do with the activities that are there. If you have ideas about activities, we have wonderful after-school activities. We have all kinds of clubs for children to belong to, and sports activities like Tom referred to. He said that this is a very crucial part of kids' development and a part of what we expect from the schools. Okay, so, and then there was a question about a procedure that the staff is working on around transgender students. And I think there was some confusion. We don't have a policy, Sarah, your question said we don't have a policy right now, and that's because we want to make sure we have a good policy. And like Kevin said, we started from the place of saying we don't want any children to be discriminated against, and that should be our starting point. And we'd rather treat children individually. So that policy still, we haven't forgotten about it, but we are waiting for more direction. But there has been a procedure because it is crucial that when these situations come up, the staff need to have information and help and support in knowing how to best support students. Again, from our AC non-discrimination policy. The intention of this was to have them become familiar with the procedure, and not the attention it wasn't meant to be shared until the staff was fully familiar with that. It's not meant to be discriminatory. Our intention is exactly the opposite. Again, it rises from AC, policy AC, and non-discrimination. So it is always going to be working towards that fully transparent and supportive policy for all students. Kevin.
Made. We don't typically originate and author our own policies. Most of the policies that we end up with are recommended to us by the New Hampshire School Board Association. They send us what they take to be sort of a model policy. We have standing policies that probably were at one time, maybe, written by school board members or administrators in conjunction with school board members. But our annual review of policies, adding new ones, modifying old ones, is based on recommendations that we get typically from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. And then we, depending on what the policy is, we push them out to staff who have expertise in different areas. And sometimes, often, we push them out to our lawyers who have a more broad awareness of how the language needs to function. And so sometimes it takes quite a while for us to come up with a finalized policy because that process can be slow.
And I might add, a lot of the our policies are driven by the legislature and by mandates. So we get what we call a fall update and the spring update, and it comes from NHSBA, and what that is here's the changes that have been legislatively enacted, and you need to make these changes in your policy and the way you operate your schools in order to legally. So a lot of that process is driven by the legislature. Kimberly, did you want to add something to that? Oh, okay. Okay, we have a question back there, and then you. I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
I'm Sue Shute from Peterborough, and I applaud the trying to come up with policy that is inclusive of all. But my only fear and caution is, in an effort to be inclusive of all, it will become useless to all. And that's my only fear.
Okay. Something to think about. Oh, hi,
I was
Denise.
just, when you were talking about the procedure, could you touch on what that is? Because I'm actually not familiar with the procedure. So I didn't really understand the person's question.
Oh, okay. Well, let me, okay, so the staff has been working on ideas, like, do I get this right? Like the ideas around how they are going to manage students who are transgender. Did you want to talk to this?
For the school district. And so over the last couple of years, I would say that we've been working on this issue. The actual school board policy is, the call number is JBAB. What we were doing is there's a small, I think it's a 40%, it could be a 60%, but there's a split percentage of districts in the state of New Hampshire that are actually using this policy. And I learned this in the research a couple of years ago. So what we started to work on was sometimes we have policy and then we have R to a policy. So what that means is they have a policy, so then we might develop the guidelines that further explain to the staff or whomever is looking at the policy what this actually means and what do I have to do step by step. It's not, it's basically to provide guidance to the staff. So what we did while we were kind of in this process of figuring out whether we were adopting the school board JBAB, having conversations, that's getting worked out in other places, right? So while that's getting worked out in other places, what can we do so that we can support students and families, right? And regarding this issue, that's the primary focus. We had staff asking, being asked these questions, I don't know how to respond. So we said, okay, well, what we can do is we can come up with a procedure that can provide some guidance to our staff so that they have support in how they might respond to a situation that not everyone would be comfortable answering, right? I may not have a problem answering a question if a student comes to me and says, this is my preferred name and pronoun that I want you to use. I could explore that with that student. Another staff member might not be comfortable doing that. So what we said is, let's come up with a procedure. So we worked on this process for about a year at the administrative level. And there were lots of things we had to work through. Lots of opinions, lots of emotion, lots of all kinds of things. And we had to kind of separate that out and really come up with something that could be a guide for staff to support the youth and the families that this topic is about. So we rolled it out to our administration. We rolled it out to our middle school and high school staff with the intention that there was going to be continued work on how we were going to consistently implement this support to our students and families. And what ended up happening is, unfortunately, the procedure that we're in the process of developing was distributed to students. And so now, the opportunity would have been, how are we going to collectively roll this out to students? How are we going to collectively roll this out to families? But we are now in this situation where there's a mass distribution of this thing that we've been trying to develop. So that's what we're talking about.
Right. And part of the concern in this question also was, why didn't parents get input? Why didn't the public get input? And that because it wasn't a policy. So policy always is open to public comment and input. And the way we do that, the way policy is created, it's created in the policy committee, and then it goes to the board. And in a process called first read and second read. So the first read, it's part of the public board meeting, the full board meeting, and those policies are presented and they're included in the agenda. So that would make them available to all of the public to see. Then we take comment from the board, from the public, and then it is, if there are changes to the policy, they will be brought up and it will be discussed at the next policy meeting before, and then amended if necessary before it goes to second read. And it's at second read that the policy, once it's where we need it to be, is voted on and adopted. So that's why there was no input, because it's not a policy. It was a in-house procedure. I don't see any other questions. Oh, okay.
Number one, has the school board reached out to any organizations that specifically support the community? Sorry, I always say it, LGBTQ plus community. There are organizations that will help school districts build those policies properly.
Mm-hmm.
They have the experience and the knowledge to do it. So reaching out to say, we want to be inclusive, how do we best do this, instead of waiting for a school board association of New Hampshire that maybe hasn't developed it yet, but there are obviously other school boards throughout the nation that have. So I don't understand why it wouldn't be something to say, where can we reach across to other organizations to help out with that?
Carrie, do you want to, yeah,
So-
go ahead.
So we do have interactions and conversations with agencies, and in fact, one of the resources as part of our procedure is from Joseph, which is an organization. The issue is, and if you look at the Joseph information, they specifically say that some of the information that their organization supports doesn't necessarily meld with the legal requirements that school districts have to follow in regard to parental, we're talking about minors, so there's some parental rights, there's free public education issues, there's, so basically what school districts have been left to do is kind of, go through the minefield, right, and figure out how can we best, given the lack of, because that is the conversations that I've had with some of these organizations, is that their position isn't always consistent with our Title IX or, a list of regulations that have been legislated that we have to follow. So this procedure has been our best attempt to try to do both.
Are you able to contact other districts in New Hampshire and find out what their policies might be? Because I do find it shocking we're in 2022 and there's a policy for that.
So again, there are a small percentage of school districts in the state of New Hampshire that have adopted the JBAB policy. And there are others that haven't. There are some school districts that have drafted procedures very similar to the process that we have. If you look at our procedure, you'll find other school districts in the state that have similar information. The thing that we did that was different is that we spent the end of last year with elementary, middle, and high school in separate groups with our legal representation, really sorting through this, talking about the legislative requirements that we have and how that differs from what some of the organizations might be asking us to support, and how can we do that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we are doing, it's up to the policy committee to decide whether they're going to adopt a policy. What we wanted to be able to do is, while they were making that decision, we needed to provide something that was going to support our staff, our youth, and our families.
Kevin, did you want to say something before I go to the audience? I know that you both had your hand up.
Policy.
It's that currently we believe that policy AC is the basis upon which procedure can be developed. So policy is typically is aspiration, and it's general. Non-discrimination, for example. But then you have to have procedures, and procedures aren't written into policy. We need to believe at this point that it's not necessarily an absence of policy, but that our policy, existing policy, is broad enough to enable the procedures that we've been talking about. That may prove not to be the case. We may need something more specific, but we haven't done that yet.
Right, and we always have the opportunity, a district's policies are always public, so we can always go online and look at other district policies. You can look at any of those policies as well, as our policies are all public. Now, Mr. Wood, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I had a second question. No, it's okay. So my second question had to do with the RFI. So I asked this earlier, and I want to make sure everybody hears it because we weren't online when I asked it. And that is, what is the school board's expected outcome to this RFI? And I understand you read me the article, right? But what is the ultimate goal that the school board sees as deficient? What is our gap and where are we trying to go and how are we going to fill that gap? Is it a financial gap? Is it an educational gap? Is it both? Is it there's too many school buses? Okay, so if it's a financial gap, right, I need more data on understanding what the financial gap is.
Okay.
Right? So if we're talking a per student cost, right, how are we going to save by consolidating schools, by not only disrupting where they're going to school today, but in addition to that, how much is it going to cost? How much more, how the buildings are going to be affected by having more students in that particular classroom and that particular building? You talk about teachers and number 5, having more students per class. When you talk about a teacher, I'm not a teacher, I'm an IT person. But if I sat in a room with 20 kindergartners versus 12 kindergartners, it's a lot different of a conversation, right? So if we want to recruit and retain teachers, I would think that having smaller classrooms for them to be able to teach better with better test scores is going to be more inclusive of the student than consolidating schools for the purpose of saving whatever X dollar amount is, right? So I would like the school board to really consider when the RFI comes out, is that going to be released publicly?
You're talking about the information that we pull in from that RFI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what, we don't have that data right now. We've got a lot of individual data, but we have to pull it all together. And yes, you absolutely will have access to that.
And was the last time an RFI was done, is that publicly available?
I don't think we ever did an RFI before. No, we never did that before. We had proposals and we had proposed reorganizations, but we never did an RFI. We've never gathered the data. That's part of the problem. We've never been able to get to the point where we can gather the data and look at it and be able to present that to the public and tell you why this is a better way to do things. Because that's our primary purpose. That's our primary goal, is better education. Because we don't think we're hitting the mark right now.
When do we expect the RFI to be completed?
It was, okay, so it's done. Jim, did you have something to say?
Can I clarify? The RFI is out there to firms that can do this for us. We're not getting any responses right now. That's where it sits.
Okay, so
If
we still have
we don't get responses from an expert in the area, we got to decide what we do next. Alan, you want to address that a little more?
I think it's the definition of what an RFI is versus what an RFP is. And the RFI that we sent out is to look for a firm to help us go through the process of determining whether or not consolidation / reconfiguration is good for the district. The RFI, when it's done, does not mean that they're going to come back to us with a solution. It means that we are going to pick one of the firms to help us through that. That may develop at that point into an RFP, a request for proposal process. So I just want it understood is that the RFI is only to find a firm that is out there. Now, we haven't gotten a lot of responses from the RFI. We are going to be regrouping a little bit because some of it has to do with how we sent a response or how we sent the RFI out to general mailboxes versus specific. We have gotten at least one response from a firm, which is a very good response, and we will now restart the process of looking for the firms to help us in the process of going through this entire consolidation reconfiguration. That is what our next step is to get a firm to work with us that has the expertise in these areas. I hope that makes it a little clearer.
Sorry, I got a follow-up question because I'm sure there's other people online that are curious. So we do an RFI, an RFP, and an RFQ, or whatever, RFI, RFP, whatever the case is. You select someone. What is your goal timeline to have that evaluation completed? And then what is the public, amount of time to do that? Are you trying to do that this year, next year, 5 years?
It's a multi-year process.
It is a multi-year process. We do not have a timeline in place to go through this whole process yet, which is why we are looking to the outside firm to help us and guide us through the process. You're looking for an answer to something that we are just starting the process with right now.
Yeah, so I'm new. I moved here a year ago.
Yep.
And so I think for a lot of families, when I listen to the school board online, I listen to your meetings every 2 weeks, right? Through the live stream, just like others are doing tonight. And I don't feel like I get enough information through that when you bring up topics like the RFI. It would have been nice to have a little bit more detail in that process when you're going through it. So whatever the next task is, maybe being a little bit more vocal on that part will help out. So where a lot of parents like myself aren't saying, oh no, I got to hurry up and run to the school board because they're trying to close down XYZ schools and we don't understand why. So maybe a little bit more clarity would be helpful.
May I make a recommendation?
Absolutely.
Get in touch with your school board member, your school board representative, and he will provide all kinds of information for you. Because our meetings we've got them down. The meetings are long, and we just don't have the ability to provide all of the information you would probably like. So absolutely, to everybody out in the public, please, or you can call the superintendent. But she's got her hand up. Got her hand up.
No. I have my hand up to address his concerns. So because sometimes what happens is people move into the district and what he's referring to happens is that, so we have, the Conval School District has what's called the Articles of Agreement. That is how the district was formed. It is the end all be all of how the district is kept together and how it's incorporated. No change can be made to those articles of agreement, and none of the schools in the towns they are presently in could ever be closed without a change to those articles of agreement. So, in other words, you would have a lot of warning that the school board can't one day just vote and say, we're going to close such and such a school. That can never happen based on the way the articles are written right now. The articles of agreement would have to be noticed. There would have to be, I think is it 2 public hearings? Two public hearings. And then it would also have to be on the warrant for you to vote on. So it would have to be presented again at deliberative session. And then it would actually, you would have a chance to vote on that. At that vote, it actually has to be a supermajority, actually more than a supermajority. It's a 2/3 vote to change the articles of agreement. So know that no one is closing, there is never going to be a motion from the floor or from the school board that can close your school.
Right, which is why it's so important for us, we have to make the case.
Speak specifically to each community will have an elementary school.
Yes.
To change that, you have to have a 2/3 majority. It speaks to elementary schools specifically. So the clarity is there. So without a 2/3 majority vote, an elementary school cannot be closed.
There is latitude on middle schools, though, correct? I believe.
Yeah,
There is.
right.
There is.
Right.
That's why I make it very clear.
Okay.
It is the elementary schools.
So just, and there's a lot of question about that. There was some changes to the Articles of Agreement. And it changed a word. So before we answer that question, I would want to speak to our legal counsel directly, just because.
Or read the Articles of
Yeah.
Agreement. Yeah, there are quite a few adaptations. Okay, Jim and Steve, before we do you, could we go back to Denise, because I never,
had a question about the procedure on how the students took to it. Like, I guess, I heard they just shared it. Was that a negative experience for the students, or?
Well, it just happened today.
Oh, okay.
at 5:30,
When you made the procedures, did students have any input on that, or it's like just made at the admin level? Because it really impacts the students, so I didn't know how that implements.
So when the procedure was developed, as I said before, the procedure was developed looking at federal and state regulations that the school district required to follow, and in a spirit of providing the staff with support so that they can then in turn support the student if they're presented with information that the student wants to share. So that's the purpose of the procedure. The piece about how students would be impacted by the information in the procedure would have to be talked about in a way of understanding, as opposed to, this is my opinion in regard to what should be in there. And that's the biggest challenge that we've had rolling this out to the staff, is understanding, the regulations and requirements, as opposed to, you didn't give I wasn't able to tell you how I thought things should go, right?
But are we talking about how, what their name is? What they want to be called? Is that what, I don't know,
Yeah.
oh, is that what we're talking about in the procedure?
So in the procedure, it kind of, it goes through, it provides different definitions of all of the different, gender fluidity, binary, what those all mean. So it offers people a little bit of a context as to what that means. And then it goes into kind of an introduction. And then there's a focus on name and pronoun. And then I'm trying to think, I don't have the procedure actually memorized, but in there, it says basically, so one of the concerns concerns that were brought to us from the teacher is, sometimes a student will come up to me in my classroom and ask me, say that my preferred name and pronoun is this or that, and the teacher might not know how to respond, which I know sounds silly, but it's a
Yeah, and it
reality.
really does. It seems like if a student asks you, it seems like that's black and white.
Right, but the problem is that there's all kinds of legal implications to changing a
Maybe on the
student's name
record, but
without,
in the school.
so what we, just for an example, one of the things that we suggested is, one of the things that's problematic, just to give you an example, is if we say, okay, I'm going to call you by your preferred name. And so then I'm emailing the parent, and I'm saying, Joe, but it's really Jane. And I'm using the birth name, then I'm actually withholding information. Does that make sense?
I suppose, but it's like, my daughter's name's Jennifer, she likes to go by June. Nobody has a problem calling her June.
Okay, could
That's, but
we,
I really didn't mean.
can we,
I just wanted to know how the students.
we can continue this conversation during the meet and greet period, but we have one more presentation that we need to get to. And we'd also advise you, if you have more questions that we're not getting to tonight, please contact your school board rep. And there's just one quick one here from Heather in Greenfield. Has there been any talk about resurfacing the high school parking lot? Did that come from our principal? Did that come from the principal? Okay, Mr. Grassi is in the process of gathering estimates for the parking lot, and they are very high. So Dick, would you like to?
So I was asked to bring closure to tonight's meeting, so what's coming up that I think is important for you to know is budgetarily, the board will be meeting with administration this Saturday. Well, they'll present the budget to us for the coming year. We'll review that, make recommendations. It'll probably go back to administration for adjustment, come back to the board. The board will ultimately approve that at a board meeting, and then when that's done, we usually go out to communities and the superintendent presents it to communities, usually in the north and south of the district. So the community becomes aware of what the budget looks like. So those are important dates budgetarily. School board meetings, the first and third Tuesdays of the month. They're online, as we've heard. It's important that people tune in, come and visit. We have an opportunity for public to speak at the beginning and end of the board. Understand that when you come, it's to share. The board is not going to respond to your answers. That's not part of our procedure, but we're there to hear you. Having people here tonight has been wonderful. And I think some of the things you share are enlightening to the board, that sometimes we think we're very clear, and sometimes you think you're very clear and we're not. So I'd like to share with you in closing what can happen sometimes when a simple little thing is miscued. So let me just share this. It happens to come from a story that was shared with me by a friend who lives in England. The story was entitled The Water Closet. It seems that a little old English lady was looking for some rooms in Switzerland. She asked the local village schoolmaster to help her. A place that suited her was finally found, and the lady returned to London for her luggage. She remembered then that she had not noticed a bathroom, or as she called it, a water closet. So she wrote to the schoolmaster. He was puzzled by the initials WC, never dreaming, of course, that she was asking about a bathroom. He finally asked the help of the parish priest, who decided that WC stood for Wesleyan Church. This was the reply. Dear Madam, the WC is situated 9 miles from the house in the center of a beautiful grove of trees. It is capable of holding 350 people at a time and is open on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sunday each week. A large number of folks attend during the summer months, so it is suggested you go early, although there is plenty of standing room. Some folks like to take their lunch and make a day of it, especially on Thursday when there is organ accompaniment. The acoustics are very good and everyone can hear the slightest sound. It may be of interest to you to know that my daughter was married in our WC, and it was there she met her husband. We hope you all will be there in time for our bazaar to be held very soon. The proceeds will go towards the purchase of plush seats, which the folks agree are all long felt needed, as the present seats all have holes in them. My wife is rather delicate, therefore she cannot attend regularly. It has been 6 months since the last time she went, Naturally, it pains her very much not to be able to go more often. I shall close now with a desire to accommodate you in every way possible, and I will be happy to save you a seat down front or near the door, whichever you prefer. So with those words, remember, we don't always understand what we each say, but what does work is dialogue. Open, honest dialogue between people who care about children. And when we do that and we continue to do that, we'll do what's best for our kids. And I believe in this district, and I've been here a long time, that there's one thing that I'm very proud of, is the open and honest dialogue between schools and parents. And we thank you for being here. And again, remember, it's not always what we think. Thank you.
That was great, Dick. Thank you. There are two just short questions here. If schools are closed, what will be done with those empty buildings? From Lisa Budnick. I don't read that. Good question. That's something we have to figure out. And from Michelle Foisey, with the current atmosphere, she's asking that we seriously consider moving up that LGBTQ policy into higher priority consideration. And we will consider doing that, Michelle. And that brings an end to the questions. Alan, would you like to close up?
I'll make this brief, unlike my opening remarks. I do want to thank everybody for showing up, and the questions have been amazing. I think what everybody needs to know is that you have a school board that is totally dedicated to making sure we have the best environment going for our children, and an administration. Now, the questions, we can probably go on for another hour or two with the questions, but time will not allow that. I think, as Janine said, it is very important is that you have your school board representatives, ask them the questions. I guarantee you will get responses. I know definitely that weird person from Dublin will always give responses to any questions that you have. But they are your first line of communication, and if they deal with operational issues, then needless to say, there is a whole chain of command that will go, or chain of events, let's put it that way, that in turn is established so that you can get the answers from the administration part. In closing, I want to thank everybody for the marvelous questions and the time that you have given here. And now, please come to the meet and greet. Yes, sir.
Alan, could I make a comment? It's not a question.
Oh, what the heck? Go on.
Thank you. I've been sitting here listening to this discussion tonight after I retired from teaching 24 years ago.
Wow.
Basically a different world from what it is. I'm hearing topics discussed tonight, and I'm going, huh? We back then, we dealt with a lot of things, but some of the things that go on now in our society, we didn't have to deal with all of this complicated type of
Exactly.
living the conditions. And I look at think of the board, you people deserve so much credit for being willing to serve the district, all the people and the kids. And I think of teachers, talk about needing support. The kids need support. Teachers, I think the whole system needs a lot of support because they are so underappreciated, and it's far more now than it used to be, I believe. Just me personally speaking, but thank you all for what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. We have 2,000 children that we support every year. And it's a daunting responsibility, but it's something that there's nothing more important than our children. And I thank you very much. Well, on to the meet and greet, and we can now have another conversation.